Hello, and welcome to this panel, Transforming the Retail Environment Through Data-Driven Insights. Also, the term big data is sort of used. And what I'm going to say is that at the end of the day, it's really just about data. I'm Lynette. I run a company called Useful and Beautiful. We deliver mobile solutions to all sectors. I have quite a passion for retail. And at the end of the day, no matter what you are doing, it's really about delivering value to that consumer. So even though I do mobile solutions, there is data behind that, because something is only going to be of use to somebody if it has that added value or benefit and actually going to make their lives a little bit easier. So you hear the terms of personalization used quite a bit. I mean, data is the thing that drives all of that. So with us today, we've got MasterCard that's going to be leading this panel discussion. They are going to be presenting some global case studies to us. Once they're done, it's going to be the fun part, where we are going to look at it from a very local perspective. And we've got two different merchants here, because we've got Uber, the new world, versus very traditional pick and pay. And we are going to have a discussion with them on what's their interpretation of data, how are they using it, and the value that they are adding to their customers. So we'll start off with Kamal from MasterCard.
Thank you, Lynette. Hi, everyone. My name is Kamal, and I lead MasterCard Advisors Merchants practice in Middle East and Africa. In that role, I engage with 70-plus merchants, retailers, airlines, hotel chains, et cetera, in the region, and we talk about their big data, marketing, and loyalty kind of topics. Lynette has kindly introduced us by saying that this is not the fun part. The fun part is the panel discussion. So thank you, Lynette. But jokes aside, where is all of this headed, right? As she rightly mentioned, the moment you say big data in any conversation, you see eyes rolling up, and people sort of start getting scared about what we're going to talk. It's really about the insights and the actions that really matter to retailers, right? The big data, the technology behind it, and as Gartner calls it, the trifecta of the three Vs, volume, variety, and velocity. I think these are all nice terms, but what really matters is what do we do with that data. Mr. Khosla from Khosla Ventures, his hypothesis is that in 15 to 20 years' time, data will be so powerful that patients will go to mathematicians, not doctors, because mathematicians will have written strong algorithms which would mine billions of data points to tell the patient what the condition is based on the symptoms, and then what is the right appropriate medication. He also says that we will still require the humane touch to deliver to a patient, and for that, he'll hire theater actors. So you'll have theater actors in the clinic reading on their laptops what the right treatment should be for a patient. So based on that, I was having a career counseling session with my kid, and I told her not to pursue medical education. She cooed and nodded in agreement. She's only 2 months old, so she doesn't really contribute fully to these discussions. Then there's China, a different facet of where this whole big data thing is going in society. So if you are a small business owner in China and you trade on the Alibaba platform and you want to get a date, then you need to have a very good Sesame score, because otherwise Chinese women will not agree to having a date with you. And that Sesame score is arrived at by mining billions of data points on the Alibaba platform. So again, how data is changing our social behavior as men and women is very interesting. With that, on the retail side, the three business drivers which have led to retailers realizing the big data opportunity and how to do something about it are on the screen. So number one, competition becoming more and more intense with online, offline competitors, competitors who specialize in niches, competitors who are much more broad-based or only on one platform. Based on that, customers are evolving. Their demands are changing. They want easier payments. They want more personalized offers. They want offers which are much more tailored to their demographic and their segment and where they live, et cetera. And operations. So if you are a retailer, you want to have a single unified view of your inventory. whether online, offline. You want to be able to serve social media and your My Favorites page, et cetera, to your customers much better. All of that is generating immense amount of data. And that data, if mined properly, is giving out patterns which are very useful for the new age retailers. So that's the whole context, and that's the whole business driver of why retailers are getting into this and what have they done. Few examples of global case studies. We all know eBay and Amazon and how they look at our past buying behavior and past browsing behavior and giving us recommendations. But what was more interesting for me is how they serve individualized My Favorites page to every customer based on your social media behavior. So what have you liked? What have you bought? What have you owned? What do you want? Based on that, eBay or Amazon would give you your My Favorites page. So eBay, just as an example, does about 5 billion reads every day and 6 billion writes into their data stack servers. That's about 25 terabytes of data every week. So that's the kind of volume that they're playing with, and that's the kind of velocity that they're playing with. Nordstrom stole a march over other retailers in the US by integrating their online and offline inventory. So if you are a customer on their online platform and you want to buy an item, Nordstrom actually tells you which store you can pick it up from if you want to actually go and pick it up directly on your own. Or else you have the option of ordering online and waiting for it to be delivered to you. Netflix did something very, very interesting with their House of Cards show. So House of Cards show, as we all know, was a very popular show. And Netflix turned around the process of producing a new show. Usually what would happen is the screenplay writers, the authors would write the script, and then they would go to the director and producer and say, now you implement the script onto a play, a TV play. What House of Cards did was they analyzed 30 million plays from their 30 million customers, and they said, let us see where are people pausing their shows, where are they fast-forwarding their shows, where are they exiting their shows, where do they change channels, etc. They did that by customer segment, by male, female, people who are active on social media or not, etc. And then they said, here are the kind of scenes, here are the kind of attributes that people like to watch on a TV show. They saw that if it's a political show like The West Wing, then these are the kind of scenes that people want to watch. They want to watch a murder scene at the end of the show. They want a wife breaking down scene at the middle of the show. They want to see a very violent outburst from the politician at the beginning of the show. And based on that, their data analysts actually gave those attributes to the authors and the screenplay writers and said, here is what we want from the show. Now you build the story around it. Based on that, they came out with the entire House of Cards show. They changed the scenes. And then they did the individualized, customized trailers as well. So they said, we know that the trailer is going to be watched by a lady, right? Or this guy in Texas, or which is the social media behavior. And based on that, they would highlight the female characters of the show, or they would highlight the presidential politics in the show, or they would highlight the social media attributes from the producer, David Fincher, on the show, to make the trailers also extremely customized to who's watching it. But I think where it went a bit too far was with Target. So Target has a basket of 25 items with which they can pretty accurately predict if a woman is pregnant or not. And based on that, they sent out a mailer to a teenage girl in the US, congratulating her for her upcoming delivery and recommending items to her that she should buy. Her father actually read that mailer, and he didn't know that his teenage daughter was pregnant. So obviously, he was quite revolted by it, and he called up Target, and he said, how could you be recommending these kind of items to my teenage daughter? The same evening, he called back Target, and he apologized because he said, you were right, my daughter is indeed pregnant. So the data can be very, very powerfully utilized. So what they look at is, if a woman is suddenly buying unscented soaps and unscented lotions, larger bags of cotton balls than she used to 3 months ago, then they can sort of predict that the lady must be pregnant. They can also predict the month of delivery. And based on that, they had done the mistake of making extremely personalized recommendations on these mailers to their female customers, Of course, after this incident and all the bad publicity that came out of it, they now impersonalize their mailers. So they randomly mix in non-pregnant promotions in these mailers just to make sure that women don't feel that they are being stalked. So that's Target. In our region, as MasterCard advisors, we work with retailers on much less sensitive topics, but still very relevant to the business. For a major furniture retailer, we worked on their location strategy. So because we see where our furniture spend's happening in different towns and districts of a particular country, we can tell a retailer where should they be opening their future stores. We also do lookalike modeling of their customers versus the customers in those towns and districts. For a major airline, we told them what is their share of wallet by route from their frequent flyer program members. And this was quite revealing for the airline because the airline thought that their frequent flyer program members were only flying with them, or at least 80-90% flying with them. And we actually showed them that they have a $110 million opportunity if they could capture that headroom. 5-1 work with an online grocer where they collaborate with the supplier of the grocer by giving customer segment and demographic data so that the vendor and the supplier and the grocer could come out with nice targeted marketing offers for these customer segments. And APT, which is our test and learn methodology team, they work with the health and beauty chain in Western Europe, where they work on how do we de-risk ideas from the innovation practice. So if the chain says that we have to do 10 different ideas next year on store reformatting or remodeling or new stores, et cetera, how do we do a small sample experiment to figure out if the idea really makes sense or not before we roll it out into the entire network? It's not easy, always a challenging endeavor. The first thing that we always struggle with is what we mentioned earlier, which is retailers don't like to hear big data, and they often feel that it's too overwhelming. What they want to know is, what do we do with this big data? What are the actions that come out of it? The second implication of this is, the moment you talk about data and analytics, they say you have to go and talk to my CRM team or my head of analytics and those teams, not the marketing guy, not the store manager, et cetera. Whereas what really needs to happen is, for data analytics, you have to have a cross-functional approach to be able to come out with the right actions. The second problem is all around the red tapeism and the bureaucracy that comes with any of these investments. So retailers would say, what is the ROI that I would get out of this investment? Why shouldn't I just invest this money into a tactical promotional campaign, 10% discount on milk or eggs or whatever, and that'll draw much more footfalls into my store than investing into this long-term data analytics capability? How do we basically make sure that as retailers, we arrive at new approaches which is different from how we traditionally evaluate new ideas? The other two problems that I have faced with retailers and merchants are what the psychologists Kahneman and Tversky refer to as overconfidence bias. So if I'm a category manager or I'm a store manager, I know my customers, I know my stores, I know everything about my market. There's nothing more the data can tell me. So that's the overconfidence that often they have until you show data to them and tell them, look, actually there is an opportunity here. And the second is about the other end of the spectrum, where when you work with the analytics guys and the CRM guys, unless you give them the 100% picture, they'll say it's not worth starting an effort. Until you tell them the end-to-end story, they'll say, no, it's not worth starting. The key is, how do you start with a small pattern, with a small amount of data, establish the advantages of that, and then roll it out across your entire database. And the last but not the least problem is what they call the burning platform, right? The lack of burning platform, especially in our region. So in the Middle East and in sub-Saharan Africa, typically, retailers tell us that they have grown so far by just substituting the mom and pop stores, right? You, as one of the major grocers in the Middle East says, we have grown by simply plonking a new supermarket on an empty plot of land. Customers walk in because they like the supermarket experience compared to the mom and pop store experience. So they've not had this burning platform so far to invest into these new technologies and new ideas. It's changing now because now we have online retailers, now we have more competition, now consumers have seen modern retail elsewhere in the world, and so they are demanding more and more. And so now we are having more engaging conversations, but so far this was one topic that used to come up. With that, we move to the panel and hear from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. And it's always lovely to hear what's happening abroad and to look at what the big brands like Nordstrom, eBay, all of them are doing. And then after we do that, then we think, okay, we're in South Africa, we're in Africa. How, what do we do here? Because this is a completely different market. It's about localization. So before we get into the panel, just a quick overview from two gentlemen here.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jonathan. I'm the general manager for Uber in Cape Town. For those of you who don't know, Uber's a technology company. We connect someone who's looking for a ride somewhere with a transportation provider who can provide that ride. So we actually have two types of customers. For riders, it's getting an easy, safe, and reliable ride at the tap of a button. And for our partner drivers, it's lead generation software that allows them to make their businesses more efficient and grow. Big data is at the heart of everything we do. It allows us to improve the efficiency and the overall experience for both our partner drivers and riders.
My name's Steve. Hello, everybody. I'm responsible for Pick and Pay Smart Shopper scheme, which is our loyalty scheme. We've been around since 2011, and I think pre-2011, our business was pretty much run on experience of the people that work there. A lot of long-term experience, so people really understood the business. The philosophy that our founding father gave us, which is all about the customer is queen. And the launch of Smart Shopper really gave us access to kind of insight and data, which enabled us to give us science behind the customer is queen. And really, we've been on a journey. I wouldn't say that Pick and Pay were experts at managing data and insight across the organisation. We're improving. We've got better over time. And it's been quite a learning process for us. I think one of the things that's important to recognise is retail really is simple. I mean, I've been watching some of the presentations that we've been going through over the last couple of days. And I think it's important to remember that, grocery retail, we buy stuff, we shift boxes to stores, and then we sell it and serve customers. And data is complex, and it's how you marry those kind of two things together and really keep it as simple as possible to make sure you're actually doing something with it.
Okay, and I think on that note, we're going to start off exactly with you, as Pick and Pay Smart Shopper is the most popular loyalty program here. Everybody knows it. And so we want to demystify this whole big data concept. Want you to talk about how Pick and Pay as a traditional retailer, how you are, explain the whole thing in simple concepts to us and an overview of the journey. So I'm sure there's a lot of learnings there.
So I think the first thing is we just don't use the term big data. I mean, you can see sometimes when you're talking about it across the business that people just switch off as soon as you start talking about big data and analytics. And what we've been doing is really just talking about the insight that comes out of it and not the engine that's in the background. We straight away from day one made a strategic decision that we'd outsource the analytics. So we've partnered with a company called 51, who do all the clever stuff for us in the background. And what we've been doing is investing in a small team internally that can try and take that and interpret it into simple actions that the business can actually do something with. Just really practical things. So I'll give you an example. When I look at one of our local stores, and it was something that you were talking about, people don't sometimes believe the data. He was really active in his community and really trying to engage with a community that's behind his store. And through the insight and the data, we were able to tell him that actually 90% of his sales was not coming from that community. Now, it's important that he's active in the local community, and he wanted to continue to invest in the local community, but it wasn't driving the sales into his store that he thought it was. So he needed to change his track and his strategy to be able to implement onto them. I think the other thing is we started out with things that we know that